Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into Caphouse Creators. My name's Amy and I'm in my workshop today and I'm going to be showing you how to make your own paint using ingredients that you'd find in your kitchen. Also, I'm going to be showing you how to make your own paintbrushes using recycled items that you'd find around your house and in the garden. I'm going to now show you the list of materials that you'll need to get started.
These are the materials that you need: white flour, salt, some form of colouring, I've put some examples in the list here, some found items lying around the house and garden, and pegs. This is the equipment that you'll need, so some form of container that holds liquid, anything you can use to stir with, recycled cardboard, weighing scales, and a measuring jug.
At the National Coal Mining Museum this year, we've got a new exhibition called Drawn from the Pit, which includes lots of pieces of artwork that have been done by coal miners themselves and people from the coal mining community. Now, coal mining itself underground was very dark and dusty, and the human eye actually needs light to be able to see colour. The way that this works is light is made up of a whole spectrum of colours similar to a rainbow. So if you had a blue object, for example, and you shone light at that blue object, the blue object would absorb all the different colours of the spectrum except for blue. The blue would be reflected back into our eyes for us to be able to see that colour. So actually coal miners themselves underground that had limited light would not have been able to see much colour.
Colours can be categorised into a colour wheel. Red, blue and yellow are called primary colours. These can be mixed together to make secondary colours. So blue and yellow, when mixed together, make green. When blue and red are mixed together, they make purple. And when yellow and red are mixed together, they make orange.
Now, yellow apparently is the most eye-catching colour, so I've thought of something that's yellow today that links to coal mining that I can use for my homemade paint today, which is a yellow canary. Now, canaries were used underground to detect for dangerous gases and they would sing, which must have been very, very nice to have a canary singing underground. But also, I like the fact that they're yellow because yellow symbolises the sun, which obviously we don't have any sun underground, and it also symbolises happiness as well. Right, let's make a start.
Yellow paint. So for the colouring for the yellow paint, I'm going to use some ground turmeric, which has got a lovely, vivid yellow colour. Any powdered food is really good at colouring paint. I'm going to be using flour. I'm also going to be using salt, which is made up of two elements, Na, which is sodium, and Cl, which is chloride, which makes sodium chloride, which is salt. I'm also going to be using water, which is made up of 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, to make H2O, which is water. Also got some weighing scales because I want to be really accurate with my paint and make sure I get the ratios correct. So I'm just going to put my beaker on there. You can use anything to mix in. You can use a yoghurt pot, old egg packaging, basically anything that holds liquid. So I'm pouring my flour in first. I'm going to aim for around 10 grams of flour. I only need a small amount of paint today because I've got a small pitcher. If you want more paint, you just increase the amount of grams that you measure. So for this paint mixture, we're actually doing 3 parts. So there's 1 part which is flour, the next part which is salt. So we're adding this now. So I need exactly the same amount of salt as flour. So as you can see on the scale, I'm going to make it up to 20 because 10 add 10 equals 20. I'm just using a lollipop stick just to mix this together, just so the flour and the salt have created a nice mixture, and now I'm ready to add the water. This recipe is made up of 3 equal proportions. 1 part is flour, the second part is salt, and the third part is water, and we want all of those in equal measures. Now we can weigh the flour and the salt like I've just done. So I've got 10 grams of flour and 10 grams of salt. But we don't tend to measure water in grams. We measure the volume in milliliters, and this can be done in a measuring jug. However, because I'm not quite sure how thick I want this paint to be, I'm just adding a little bit at a time to make sure that I've got the consistency that I am happy with. I'm quite happy with this consistency now. It's sort of a medium texture. It's not too thin, but not too thick either, so it will glide across the page nice and smoothly. I'm now ready to add my colour. So with the ground turmeric, I'm only going to add a little bit at a time because you can always add more in, but you can't take it out. So I'm just going to add in a little bit, and then I'm going to just keep adding a little bit more at a time until I'm really, really happy with the colour. You can use any powdered colour to make a paint. So I'm using natural ingredients here. So you can use turmeric, you could use paprika, which creates a nice red colour. Mustard powder is another good one because that's a vivid yellow colour. You could even try, if you've got some coal from our museum, grinding that piece of coal up to create the black dust to create the colour for your paint. If anyone has got any coal and wants to try that, I'd be really interested to see your results. So I've just got a little bit of scrap cardboard now that I'm testing this out on. I'm basically just doing this to test that I'm happy with the shade. Now I wanted quite a vivid yellow for the Canary, and I'm quite happy with this. But you can add more at later stage if you want to. Red paint. So for the next of my primary colours, I'm going to do reds, and I want to achieve this by using the colour from a wax crayon. You can choose any colour to do this. I'm just choosing red because it's the next of the primary colours. It's really good to recycle old crayons when they've got too short to draw with. So what I'm doing here is I'm just scraping off some of the wax, coloured wax, into the container. I'm using a lollipop stick to do this. Wax crayons are really, really soft, so it doesn't need much force for me to do that. And as you can see, I've tried a few different methods, but actually laying it on the table proved to be the best method. Once I'm happy and I've got a good amount of the red wax, I'm then going to just pop it into the bottom of my container, ready for the next stage. I only want a small amount of red paint for my painting today. If I was wanting to create a bigger batch of paint, I would add more of the wax crayon. So what I'm doing now is I'm just mixing in some hot water. I've actually boiled the kettle for this, so if you're doing this at home, make sure you get an adult to help you out with this. So similar to a wax candle, which melts when the flame heats it up, this is the same. The wax crayon is melting as the water heats it up. So similar to the yellow paint now, we're going to add in the texture of the flour and the salt. So what I'm doing is I am resetting my weighing scales to 0. I'm going to do the same again where I add an equal measure of flour and salt. As you can see, as I've added my flour and salt, it's actually gone quite clumpy. I'm just adding some more water in now just to create the consistency that I am happy with. I could add some more wax crayon into this now if I wanted to make the reds more vivid, but I'm going to be using this for the beak and legs of my canary, and I'm quite happy with this. So the red paint is done. Blue paint. So the colouring that I'm using for the blue, which is the last of our primary colours, is actually some colouring that's used for soap. You can use food dye as well, and this works really, really well. Similar to the yellow and the red paint, I'm doing exactly the same thing to create the texture. I'm mixing together an equal measure of flour and salt. So I'm going to do the same thing, 10 grams of flour, and then add another 10 grams of salt into this mixture to create the texture for my paint. What I really like about these processes of making paint is it's similar to mixing chemicals in a lab. It actually includes a lot of the same skills, and also the skills that you use when you're cooking in the kitchen. Things like weighing, mixing, heating things up, cooling things down. So actually practicing a lot of skills that are used in lots of different areas. Now I'm actually trying something a little bit different here because I do like to challenge myself. I said that we don't tend to weigh water in grams, we tend to measure the volume in millilitres. So I am going to now measure 50 mils of water in my measuring jug, and I'm going to see whether this is a good amount for the consistency that I want for my blue paint. So I'm going to pour it in. And I'm going to be a little bit of a rebel here and just dump all the water in and trust my own judgment and hope for the best. If you do make your paint a little bit too runny, you can always add a little bit more flour and salt, but make sure to add these in equal measures. So what I'm going to do now is add my colour in. Again, like I've done with the yellow earlier on in this video, I'm just going to add a little bit at a time. I'm actually going to aim for a bit of a sky blue because I want the sky behind my canary to be a lovely blue colour that you'd expect to see in the summer. So make sure you do give it a good mix as well. You'll see that I've got a few different lumps of flour in here. You can sieve the flour as well, although I didn't do this because I don't actually have a sieve at home. So now it's time to test it out. So again, I've got a little scrap of cardboard that I'm going to try this out on, and I'm really happy with that. So the blue is done. Now I've got all three of my primary colours. Paintbrushes! So what I love about making my own paintbrushes is that you can use lots of recycled items that you can find around your house and in the garden as well. I've just got some paper here because once I've made a paintbrush, I like to just feel how the texture feels on the paper. So I'm starting with these feathers that I got left over from another craft project. So I'm just seeing how it glides over the paper. So that's one paintbrush done. I've got some foam here that I got out of some packaging. I thought this might be quite nice to use for clouds. So I've got some leaves here from the fern out in my garden. Interestingly, ferns existed 310 million years ago and is actually one of the components of coal, because coal is made of trees and leaves, including ferns, and we find a lot of ferns underground in fossils. I'm now going to be using some bubble wrap. Again, I got some from some packaging. Thought that might create some nice texture as well. So I've got some ribbon here that again I used in another craft project. So I'm just going to snip off some little sections, almost to create thick bristles of a brush. So I've done 3 because 3 feels like a nice round number. I'm also going to add some different bristles which are a different texture from this little bit of wool that I've got lying around. It's actually some wool that I did knit a scarf from and I've just got some left, so why not reuse some of the wool? I'm not too worried about these not being the same length at the moment because once I've added them into the peg I can trim them with some scissors very easily. The great thing about making your own brushes is that really quick and easy to make, and if you're not quite happy with them, the bristles or whatever you choose to pop in there are interchangeable. So I'm really happy with the selection of different brushes that I've made today for my picture. They're all different textures and different widths. So let's make a start painting my canary with my homemade paints and homemade paintbrushes. Let's get creative! So I've drawn a couple of canaries here. So as I said earlier, canaries were used underground to detect for dangerous gases. Now I've actually used the back of some packaging here. So this is the back of some apple pie packaging because I do like a nice apple pie as a sweet treat with my cup of tea on an evening. So I've used the back of the package and the front of the package as well. What I really like about using recycled cardboard is it's got a really lovely texture and it's a lot cheaper than buying cardboard from the shop. So I'm going to start by painting the canary the yellow colour. What I quite like is coincidentally the feather is yellow, which I might stick on as the tail after. I'm going to try not to get too precious with this. I want it to be quite experimental, so I get used to using the different textured brushes and really just enjoy having a go at doing something different. I'm really pleased with how vivid this yellow has turned through using the turmeric. I might want to add a little bit of orange to this canary afterwards just to add a different tone there. So I might mix a little bit of red in with the yellow afterwards just to create some orange, to create that secondary colour. So I'm now going to try my little foam peanut. I love the name of these pieces of packaging. And I'm going to just basically just dab it onto the paper using as much paint as possible to get that coloured pigment in there. And I want it to look a little bit like clouds, so I'm just trying to just dab on to create a nice fluffy texture to my painting. So I'm now going to have a go with the bubble wrap as well, just because that creates just an added texture. It's also because it's made of plastic, it's not absorbing any of the paint, so you can see it's going on more thickly, whereas the foam was absorbing some of the paint a little bit like a sponge. So now I'm ready to do the legs of the canary. I'm actually not using a paintbrush for the first bit. I thought I might as well just use what I've got available to me, which is my lollipop stick, just so I can be really accurate. Another thing that I might try as well a little bit later on is the fern, as that's got a really fine tip to it. So it's just about being experimental really and just doing trial and error. I'm now going to just tickle the canary's belly with this textured paintbrush that I've done. I quite like how the paint's going on and it can be quite fluid with this style of paintbrush. I'm using the fern because it's got a really fine tip for smaller areas such as the tail here. So I don't want to dip it in water, so I'm just wiping off the excess paint from the end so I can swap colours because I don't want to contaminate the different primary colours. And then I'm just going to just do this fine detailed bit of leg with the fern there. So I'm really happy with the way that this is looking and I'm really pleased that I've managed to use all three of the primary colours, so that blue, yellow and red. What I might do is get another 3 jars and make the secondary colours, so I've got all 6 colours for me to do another painting. So I can use again the red and the blue to make purple, I can use the red and the yellow to make orange, and I can use the blue and yellow to make green, so I've got some more paints to work with. Also, I don't want to waste my paint, so I'm going to put my lids on these jars afterwards so I can use it at a later date. If you don't have lids for your jars, you can always put a little bit of cling film over them, tin foil or paper or an elastic band, basically anything to keep them airtight to stop the water from evaporating and your paint drying out. I'm just removing some excess paint with some bubble wrap and my fingers as well. I'm not afraid to get my fingers messy. But if you do make an error, you can use a tissue or some kitchen roll just to get rid of some of the excess paint if you do make a mistake. Woo! And I think it's done! So there we have it. A finished painting of a canary using homemade paint with homemade brushes.
Thank you ever so much for tuning in to Caphouse Creators today. I hope you enjoy making your own paints and your own paintbrushes and getting creative at home. Please, please, please post examples of your artwork in the comments below so I can take a look at those. That'll be really exciting to see. We've also got lots of things going on our social media, so keep taking a look at that. We're also on Twitter. And if you go to ncm.org.uk, we've got lots of things on our website under learning if you want to find out more. I will speak to you soon. Bye.